Hey folks, so some of you may wonder why after being in this business for 32 years that I'm not more advanced or have more wealth behind me or have lots more inventory or something like that. Well, life happens. That's the main reason. Life happens. I am 52 now, and I've had to reset a few times in my life. Like I said, life has happened. As they say, life is what happens when you're making plans, and that's exactly what's been going on in life. Various things have occurred in my life that have caused me to have to rebuild a few times. The first was moving from one location to another. I had moved from my Portage location of 3 years, a 900 square foot space, and I wanted to increase my business. So it was either expand or move to a higher traffic location, or so I thought. Now, I had an opportunity, or so I thought, to expand into the neighboring building, but then that building ended up not being available. So I opted to move to a higher traffic location. It was a smaller space on Corydon Avenue, Winnipeg, which was Little Italy, or is Little Italy, and is more of a tourist-ish type type area, and has more traffic. However, it turned out that even though I could open up after 6 o'clock or stay open after 6 and have 25, 30 people in my store, I'd sell nothing. I'd have people spilling gelati and coffee on my carpet, but sales were negligible, or pretty much zero during those times. The amount of traffic didn't translate to sales, just translated to a lot of looky-loos and tourists that weren't buying anything. So that meant that after a year's time, after spending that money and going into that smaller space, that I had to move to a different location. So I opted for larger space in that particular case. And after a year's time, I sublet that space and moved to a 1,800 square foot location. So in that location, I was sharing space with a friend who had an architectural antiques business, and we essentially split the space roughly in half. I had a little bit less, but roughly half of the space. So it was about a 4,000 square foot commercial space downtown in the Exchange District of Winnipeg, which was developing at the time into a tourist destination, but had a lot of antique shops around in the area as well. So it was a destination for antiquers as well. Now, I ended up in that location for about 3 years. Now, the third year, the friend was kind of getting burnt out and sold her business. And the person who bought the business turned out to be, well, a piece of work. So, long story short, I opted to move out and avoid getting a reputation by association in that space. So I opted to go strictly on eBay and do it that way. So that's what I did. I packed everything up in a semi-trailer into storage and rented a warehouse space as well to operate out of, and I did eBay and such out of the house. Now, I had at the time quite a bit of inventory. Like I said, I had 2,000 square feet plus store fixtures, and I opted for having an auction. Now, I also had an advertising collection probably worth at the time over $100,000 or so, maybe 150, maybe even 200,000. So some very quality items. Basically, it was stuff that I had done a pick, kept the best item, kept the primo item, and put it on the wall. So it was essentially my bank account or my savings, my investments And at the time, my fiance at the time and I had spotted a warehouse building in the Exchange District that was for sale for $180,000. Now, property values were jumping at that time, or ready to jump. We could kind of see what was going to happen. So we were going to buy this property, but we needed cash to do it. So we opted to have an auction. Now, the market in Manitoba is soft, so we didn't really want to have the auction here. We wanted to have it in Alberta, where at the time the money was flowing and the market was far better. So we ended up selecting a location and an auctioneer in Didsbury, Alberta. So we had the auction, or we're holding the auction in Didsbury, which Didsbury is a little tiny town or was at the time, halfway between Calgary and Edmonton, two major cities in Alberta, essentially the capital and the other major city. So you would suspect that the auctioneer would actually advertise in both cities to get people to come down. Unfortunately, they didn't do their job. They didn't advertise in those two cities. They did a very poor typed page of description. Didn't really contact people. We arrived in a semi-trailer with a 54-foot semi-trailer full of smalls and some store fixtures, but mainly smalls, and 3/4 of my advertising collection. We're expecting to do $250,000 over 2 days. Probably should have been a 3-day auction. That was kind of our error there as well. But so we had opted to do a 2-day auction. When we got there on a Wednesday, the auctioneer came and looked at some of the stuff. I pulled out stuff and he said, "Oh, I should make some phone calls." What? Now? A couple days before the auction, you're making phone calls? Oh, geez. That should have been our first clue. Also, I should mention that this was the week of 9/11. The planes hitting buildings and destroying buildings didn't help, of course. So between the auctioneer's blunders or lack of proper preparation and his lack of knowledge, despite him claiming to have the knowledge behind him of this stuff, he had no idea what he was selling most of the time. $200, $300 items were getting $25, $10, that sort of thing. So yeah, the sales weren't happening. We had probably too much stuff for 2 days. It should have been a 3-day. Should have been a cataloged auction. Shouldn't have been just a regular auction. But had it been advertised properly, things probably would have gone okay, or at least better than they did. Instead of $250,000, we did $28,000. Now, the auctioneer also had stated that if auctions don't go as well, then he would reduce his cut. That didn't happen either. So anyway, he took his cut and his advertising costs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Left us something with about, after expenses, after the truck and everything, left us with about $17,000. Which didn't cover some of the debts that I had at the time. I had some credit card debt and such. So that disappeared fast, and I was out the inventory, my 3/4 of the advertising collection, and basically had nothing. So, yeah. So, starting over again. So, after that, after trying to recover from that, which was difficult, it really destroyed a relationship and didn't didn't help the situation. So yeah. Anyway, now I'm leaving out a lot of detail. One of these days, maybe I'll write about it, or do a video with more detail. But you can imagine what the situation was at that point. So I was doing eBay basically online to survive and make a living. And I had an idea. I've always been into salvage as well, and recycling and repurposing. So what I had planned was opening a salvage, surplus, and thrift store. The idea basically was to divert materials from landfill and look at selling basically other people's trash. And by that I basically mean not the common person's trash, although that was a small aspect of it, garage sale leftovers, thrift shop rejects, that sort of thing, but repurposing and reusing and re-diverting materials from landfill from factories and major businesses, which I did. I acquired things like lab equipment for nothing, lab supplies for nothing, brand new lab supplies. We got tons of packing material. I never was short of foam popcorn, bubble wrap, etc. I had sources for all that sort of stuff, and clean materials. I'm not talking dirty, I'm not talking grungy or anything. I'm talking all this stuff was a lot of it was brand new or in like new condition. We sold books, for example, at 50 cents a pound. We sold clothing by the bagful. We sold fabric by the bagful. We sold mist-tint paints, that sort of thing as well. And I still had my vintage business on the side. So anyway, opened that business, and unfortunately due to a lot of bureaucratic screw-ups, which essentially means that I went to all the different departments, told them where I was setting up, and asked if I could do what I was planning to do, a retail business, in that space, and with the amount of space that it had. I was told what the parameters were, what I needed to do in order to do that, and I did those things. There was various things like opening up a back door and exposing the front door, of course, that sort of thing. But through a variety, and like this is the short version, through a variety of bureaucratic BS, I couldn't really open up legally. I couldn't get open. They caused a reduction in what I could set up retail-wise. Like 900 square feet was the limit. I had a 10,000 square foot space that I was paying $3,500 a month for, which was expensive for warehouse space. But for retail space, that was all right. And I could see that I could make at least that plus profits and survive. But when you can't open, you can't advertise, you can't be legally open, what do you do? Also, black mold started growing in the basement. The landlord would not clean it up. The landlord got really angry when I called the province in, and the province forced her to clean it up. Unfortunately, what the province told her to do was clean it with bleach, and bleach doesn't actually kill black mold. It has to be remedied with Benefect or some other mold killer. Anyway, long story short, we ended up losing that space, being evicted, having to leave it all behind because we had 24 hours to vacate. We had 10,000 square feet worth of merchandise. So I lost a lot of merchandise again in that particular instance. So set up, ended up after that, after vacating, and a lot of drama. There was a lot of drama I'm not covering here. After a lot of that drama and such, recovered basically from that and opened up in a small retail space on King Street in Winnipeg. So kind of ran a bit of a salvage surplus out of there. Basically ran it as a secondhand shop. Had somebody else running it. And I was doing my running around as well. Now, that ended up getting shut down when I met a woman, and we ended up deciding to buy property out of the city, about 2.5 hours out. Basically, we were visiting my parents and saw property and fell in love with the property and decided to move. Kind of a sudden thing, but so we shut down that store and opened up in another location temporarily to liquidate stuff, and blew out a lot of merchandise, which was fine. Sold quite a bit of stuff and made some money. So opened up and closed up that store in about I forget what it was, a couple months time, 3 months time, 2 months time, something like that. So then it was moving to 2.5 hours away to a rural location, essentially starting over again, having to reestablish, etc. The plan was to build a store on the front of the property because the property was on number 1 highway, which is the Trans-Canada, which is the major thoroughfare right through Canada. So lots of traffic, theoretically. However, finances were tight. We did buy the property. I sold my home, she sold her home, and we bought, like I said, this place, or the 94 acres and a 3,500 square foot house, and we're going to build a shop on the front. Well, that didn't happen. We ended up trying to do a bed and breakfast, so we did renovations for that, put a lot of money into that. That didn't really work out, so we ended up renting rooms to workers that were in the area in the oil industry. But the shop never really came to fruition. We did have a cold building, or a pole building rather, that we walled in and tried to set up a shop in it on the cheap, using salvage materials, which made it look pretty cool. But my father at the time was helping us, and unfortunately, unbeknownst to us at the time, Alzheimer's was setting in. So he wasn't able to complete the tasks. Unfortunately, yeah, so that didn't really work out. Basically, long story short, the building on the front never came to fruition. And I ended up getting divorced. So, as a result, I had to sell the property. So, property was sold. We had a fight with the insurance company over some issues, which again, I'll leave out all the drama. There was significant drama, enough that it left me with PTSD. That was where this PTSD I deal with has come from. So, yeah, we basically almost lost the home due to this insurance company's illegal actions. And after a year's time of not being able to get insurance again, I basically called them out on what they did. They contacted their legal department, and their legal department said, give him whatever he wants. So I opted, at the time, I just wanted insurance so I could get my mortgage back in shape. And a week before the property was to go to auction, we pulled it out, or I pulled it out of default, out of mortgage default. So it didn't go to auction in the end. And so it was still on the market for sale. However, the market was depressed. We sold it for about a third of what we were asking, or a little more than a third. And the deal was I had a month to move. So that's a month to find a place and renovate that the new place and move in. So I basically did that on my own, several van loads on my own over 2 weeks' time to move 10 years worth of accumulation to a new location. So I left about $250,000 worth of merchandise behind. Starting over again, and that puts me here in my current commercial building of about 3,000 square feet, a couple offices, one office hopefully I can rent, and I've got a suite that I live in the back. So I also had to get rid of some of my collections, turn them into inventory because I didn't have a 3,500 square foot house anymore. I've got a 600 square foot suite. So yeah. The one thing that all this drama in my life has taught me is that it's just stuff. It's not that important in the big picture. The objects that we handle are just stuff, and it's not that important as your mental health, your living situation, etc. There's things that are a lot more important than just stuff. Stuff is my life, though. Vintage stuff, of course, is my life, and salvage and such. I still enjoy all that. But it's still not the most important thing. So I'm also at the age where I'm thinking retirement. Not that I'm ever going to retire from the antiques business. I'll be doing this until I'm 6 feet under or just unable to do it at all. So, yeah, we're only holders of this stuff for so long anyway. So letting it go is what you sometimes just have to do. So anyway, I'm now, because I'm 52, I'm thinking future ahead, and I've also dealt with so many estates and so many people that have retired and are dealing with stuff, having to get rid of all their stuff or a lot of stuff in order to scale down, in order to move to smaller accommodations and such. So I'm thinking, well, I want to make life easier. So I'm not working as hard as I did at one time. Energy levels is one. I'm getting older. Body's telling me that too. Yeah. So I'm not working as hard and don't want to work as hard as I have in the past. I'm not where I want to be or plan to be, but life, like I said, throws you curves. But when it gives you lemons, you got to make lemonade. And that's what I've done. I've adapted. I've basically survived all these issues. Come out with good amount of scars and such, but that's life. Anyway, so that's where I am now, and that's what you're watching now is the rebuilding and the day-to-days of an antique dealer who's been in the business for 32 years and has restarted several times. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Please be sure to like and subscribe and check out our other videos on antiquing, picking, thrifting, scrapping, etc. Take care, folks.